After 10 seasons of Brewed, one thing that we've learned is that we're always learning, meeting so many incredibly talented people and hearing their stories, learning about the art and science of brewing. So we thought, why not test our knowledge? This week, we're heading to Ames, Iowa, where the future of craft beer is being brewed, literally, inside Iowa State University's own Brew Lab. Forget textbooks. These future brewmasters are getting their hands dirty thanks to their very own Doc Brown.
Did you hit your head on a toilet? Is this like a flux capacitor kind of situation?
No, I think he hit his head on a toilet.
Okay. And we'll introduce you to two grad students who aren't just brewing some serious suds, but scientific breakthroughs.
I'm sorry, my brain just broke in half.
Class is in session on this episode of Brewed.
The future of brewing is taking place in real time, and I mean that in a lot of ways that are going to blow your mind. This is Professor Robert Brown. Professor, first of all, what an incredible achievement this space is. Help me understand the brewing science program, how it started, and why you're doing it.
April 2020, this was my pandemic project. A lot of things shut down, slowed down, and I had a young man by the name of Jordan Funkhauser who worked in the food science building come to me and say, wouldn't a brewing program in the food science department be great? Well, I agreed. I'm a home brewer, and so it struck me as something that I had the time to look into. It took us over a year to get everything in place.
You had to walk through a lot of, I imagine, red tape and brick walls to get to where we are right now.
Well, not only calling it a crazy idea, but an irresponsible one. Are you kidding?
Right.
Exposing college students to alcohol?
Right.
So there were a lot of hoops to jump through, and I learned the university was a much bigger place than I ever imagined, considering the groups that I had to get approval through.
Well, this isn't the sort of class I'm assuming that you could just take. I mean, this is pretty high science stuff. You'd have to really, you can't just walk in here on your first day on campus and be part of the ISU.
Well, that's
lab.
correct. Now, I will point out the most important prerequisite for the course.
Right.
You had to be 21 years old
That makes
of the
sense.
time that we offered the first class, because we start brewing beer the first day of class.
Right on.
But I wanted to be open to many students. So the only other prerequisite is that they had some exposure to some physical, chemical, or biological science.
What does the first day of school look like, the first day of class?
First day of class is I give them a real brief overview of how to brew a 1-gallon batch of beer. Now I do that partly to give them just some fundamentals of what's involved, but also to engage them immediately, because many of them come in and look at the syllabus the first day and decide, I'm out of here.
Right, because you think you're taking a beer class and you think it's going to be some sort of Spuds McKenzie good time. That reference is probably lost on college kids today, but you know what I'm talking
Yes.
about. I mean, I like to think I majored in beer 30 years ago, but not officially. You mentioned you're a home brewer. How long have you been doing that?
Well, I didn't even drink beer till well into my 50s.
What?
And it was my sons, 3 sons became of age, and they said, Dad, there's this different kind of beer. It's not, it's not Bud Light kind of stuff. And I sampled, I said, well, this is pretty good. And before long, they said, well, we should try to brew it at home.
Your kids must have known that, once they introduced this to you, you were going to take to it.
No, I think they were hoping I would take to it.
They were hoping, okay.
Because then we started creating a lot more beer. Now, we had to move out of the kitchen because that was too much of a mess.
Gotcha. What are they working on right now back there?
Well, they're doing a competition IPA.
Okay.
So this was an opportunity for the instructors not to tell them how they were going to produce the beer, not tell them what the recipe was, but they needed to develop a recipe for an IPA, and then we will bring in a panel of brewers to evaluate and judge it. And the winner, we will then scale up their brewing and offer it for sale.
Now that's another important component here, is that the beer that you make, this is not something you're going to find on the store shelves at Hy-Vee anytime soon, but it is available at a couple of key locations.
So we keg some of the beer, and we have sold it to the Iowa Tap Room down in Des Moines. Here on campus, there in the Memorial Union is a place called the Maintenance Shop, where students of age can go in and buy a can of beer. Well, we've helped set up a tap system for them over there. So we're offer exclusively at the maintenance shop beer from the Brew Lab that's on tap.
Since it started now, and you started the whole process in 2020 and started brewing in what, 21?
Yes.
What have you learned since you've started this program? What have you either learned from the process or from the students?
Well, I've learned from the students that many of them are extremely smart.
Right.
They've had great coursework. They may be, A students, but they haven't had as many opportunities to do hands-on things.
Right.
And this is an opportunity for them actually to apply some of the things they've learned. Many of the students are engineering students. Get their hands dirty, learn how pumps can fail, and they do, and how heat exchangers can get fouled, and they do. And so it's a real, I think for many of the students, eye-opening on, oh, this is a real world. This is how things really go.
So, and it's been 30 plus years since I've been in college, but is it a lab situation where you have a lab partner? Do they work in teams?
It's a team sport here because we have a lot of demand, but fairly limited equipment. We will assign 5 students to a brew house, and these are 10-gallon systems that they work with.
What do you hope that they're going to take away from what they've learned in this class?
First and foremost is that they know what craft beer is.
Right.
I'm surprised how many of them have no idea what craft beer is, or they know what it is and have never sampled it. Partly because they feel it's too expensive, partly because it's not the typical college culture.
Right.
And I'm astonished to learn how many of them end up being kind of beer snobs before the course is even over, going to the bars and insisting to know which beer is which, knowing when a beer glass is actually dirty because the bubble's going up the side of it. And so getting some practical understanding of what the craft beer industry is about, what makes it unique.
How many of them do you think will end up going on to careers in brewing?
A small portion of them, because we catch them in their senior year.
Right.
Many of them are already interviewing or have jobs lined up. But I have seen some take their knowledge and go into graduate programs to study issues related to the brewing industry, and some of them have gone into the brewing industry. But generally, it's too late to convince them of that.
Right, because they hopefully have things figured out by the time they're a senior here at Iowa State. I love the idea. I have a son who will be in college in a couple of years, and I love the idea of him making something for me that's not an ashtray. You know what I'm saying?
Send him my way.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to bring.
But he's got to come to Iowa State.
I think that might be something he's thinking about doing. I'm going to bring home some brochures, and you can count on me, Doc. I'm going to start leaning on him pretty heavy to become a cyclone. So this is the part that's going to blow your mind. At least it blew my mind. Sarah, you're working on some crazy stuff, and I know Alex, you're working on some crazy stuff. The equipment that they're working on, I mean, that looks like it's pretty much state-of-the-art stuff, yeah?
Well, that's a story in itself.
Well, here we are.
Okay.
It's a half-hour show, Doc.
Blickman Engineering ended up donating much of the equipment, or a good portion of the equipment, and you'll see the Blickman name in the lab. How did that happen? The university did a story about my home brewing and aspirations, and I got an email that said, I'm an alum, how can I help? And it was signed John Blickman.
Nice.
I almost fell out of my chair.
Oh, gosh.
Turns out, when I was an assistant professor in mechanical engineering, that was a long time ago, by the way, he was undergraduate in the mechanical engineering department.
Wow.
We never discussed whether he took my thermodynamics course, but I will say he refers to it as thermodynamics. So,
so that sounds like maybe he did then, huh?
Possibly. But he ultimately ended up supporting a lot of the purchase of equipment from his company, and he has joined us every semester in what we call Brewer's Day at the end of each course.
You were telling me, though, as far as like the Midwest is concerned, that there's programs about this size maybe on the West Coast, but for the
bigger,
Midwest, or bigger.
Or bigger.
But this really is at Iowa State something special in terms of the Midwest, right?
It's a start, and my ambition is actually to grow it to be competitive with the bigger programs.
This was an idea you had because of the pandemic. It's now 2025. Like, what will this look like in 5 years?
Come back in 5 years to check my predictions, but I think you'll see that we are doing more than just offering a course that is a technical elective. We'll be offering training to to the brewing industry. We will be doing research that is in the scientific literature. We'll have patents that we are able to license to companies. And we'll be doing outreach to the brewers, bringing them in. And we're doing all of that now, but I think you'll see that it has grown.
I'm getting thirsty just thinking about it.
Well, tell me what kind of beer you want. We probably have it in tap here.
That's what I want to hear. Professor Brown, keep up the good work. What an incredible program you have here.
Thank you.
And young people that make me excited about drinking beer for years to come. Although between you and me, I was going to be excited anyway. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
This is the part that's going to blow your mind. At least it blew my mind. The Iowa State Brewing Program. Behind us, these are undergrads, right? Working on their IPA project, the competition. These are graduate students. Sarah and Alex are joining us here. Sarah, you're working on some crazy stuff. And I know, Alex, you're working on some crazy stuff. What is it about what you're learning here that you're most excited about, and how do you hope to use it once you eventually are out in what we call the real world?
I mean, it's an industry that I never thought I would be a part of. I ended up over here by chance almost. You know, I started in Dr. Brown's other lab as a research assistant, grad student over there, and found out that he had started this program, had heard good things about it, and I was like, I really enjoy beer, really enjoy craft beer. Right. I had home brewed once or twice, and so I was like, how do I get into this lab and doing something really cool? And the opportunity came up, and so I've had a lot of fun with it since.
Right on.
Yeah, I had no intentions of ever getting into brewing. I actually don't really like beer. I know that's probably not a great thing to say on this show.
It's honest. I mean,
I really like a sour.
Alex, I want to be clear. It's not a great thing to say on the show, but it's honest, so we'll go along with it.
But I have really come to enjoy, like, at least the art of brewing,
right.
and I can appreciate like the different flavors of beer and things like that. But really the way I got into this was we were working on something completely different on the other side of campus, and Dr. Brown said, I want you to apply this to brewing. And now I'm over here, probably more in the lab over here than I am in the lab on the other side of campus.
We say it all the time on this show that craft brewing is the intersection of art and science. I'm guessing you're more into the science than the art, but it also sounds like the art is something that excites you, yeah?
Mm-hmm. It's something I really enjoy, and I've actually had the pleasure of being able to brew with our head brewer here. Right. So when we're brewing for production, for sales, I actually have been able to come in and kind of learn under him, who's a well-established brewer, and kind of learn of the things outside of the lab and outside of the science, and so I really enjoy that.
So, I mean, you're not going to go right to work at a brewery, on the floor. What you're doing is kind of next level stuff. And this is the part that I promised you your minds would be blown on. I don't even know where to get started with what you're working on. Help me understand.
So what we're working on kind of my half, is kind of revolutionizing the carbonation process.
Right.
So in a lot of craft size breweries, they're using bright tanks to carbonate their beer, where they're bubbling carbon dioxide into their big vat of beer until it reaches carbonation. We're basically turning that on its head. So instead of using small bubbles and a big volume of liquid, we're spraying beer into a big volume of carbon dioxide. And so because the droplets are so small, they absorb the carbon dioxide a lot faster than you can achieve when you have a ton of liquid.
And the point of doing this, I mean, it sounds like a tremendous waste of time until you realize it's not about wasting time, it's about gaining time and saving resources, right?
Yeah, so you're saving a lot on your energy, both costs and the greenhouse gases associated with generating that energy. Right. And then you're also able to carbonate more beer using a single bright tank than you would be able to with the traditional method.
So this is going to save resources. It's going to be better for the bottom line for breweries, which should, in theory, be better for our bottom line as consumers. And it's because rather than pumping the gas into the water, you're pumping the water into the gas.
Yeah, pretty much.
How do you even come up with something like that?
Well, my actual research is on just dissolving gases into liquids. And so we're trying to evaluate different methods to do that, and that method is using droplets. So we said, okay, well, if this can be applied to other systems in industry, why can't we apply it to beer?
Wow. So beer will be carbonated more efficiently and quicker.
About 100 times faster.
I'm sorry, my brain just broke in half. It'll be carbonated 100 times faster.
Yeah.
And it'll be cheaper. This is a game changer, and it works. Like, what kind of reaction have you had from brewers? Because I can't imagine they're stoked about changing a fundamental process so quickly based on a paper that you wrote, right? I mean,
yeah, I feel that the anecdotal evidence that we have from our taste testing within the lab, we've found that there's no identifiable taste difference between the beer that we're carbonating with this rapid device versus the beer we're carbonating in a bright tank.
You kids are in such a rush these days. We're gonna carbonate things faster, we're gonna get the hops in there faster, and I'm here to say bravo. Sarah, you're working on
Hops.
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 So this is part 2 of the mind-blowing science that you're learning about on Brewed this week. What are you doing with hops?
So my work with hops is surrounding the whirlpool. So before the wort's been fermented, before it's actually beer, but it's how we're initially getting those hop aromas and flavors into the beer.
Right.
So what all those IPA fanatics are looking for is more and more and more and more hops.
Right.
And the idea was typically you whirlpool for onwards of 30 minutes, right? Because you're trying to get those solids out of the way and get all of those hop oils solubilized. So our flavors and our aromas are coming from these essential oils that are in our hops.
Right.
And the idea is that, you know, traditionally you think that they're gonna kind of solubilize and be in the wort, and then they're really, really volatile. So they're gonna leave that wort super fast, is the thought.
Right.
And so the initial way this project came up was, is there a way we can identify the peak? So before we start losing our hop aromas to the air, you know, when do we need to stop whirlpooling so we get the most flavor into the beer?
The most bang for your buck.
Most bang for your buck, you know, if this is happening way before 30 minutes, that's 30 minutes you don't need to spend whirlpooling.
I am shocked that I understand everything so far. You're doing great.
Perfect.
So far, I'm on board.
Okay, so that's the idea.
Okay.
That's what we expected to happen.
Okay.
When we actually ran the tests, you know, went well, and we reached those peaks in the first 3 minutes of whirlpooling, which is so fast, so short. And the funny thing is, we never saw those levels decrease.
You don't need to do 30 minutes, you can just do 3 minutes. Is that what you're saying?
You could, or you could throw them in at the very end of your whirlpool and get those same aromatics in the beer.
Does it have a name, this process you've come up with?
We should come up with one.
Sarah Whirlpool
We
is
should.
what we're going with for now. But if we do things your way, the benefits are...
You know, reducing your time.
Yeah.
You know, money is time.
You kids are in such a rush these days. We're gonna carbonate things faster, we're gonna get the hops in there faster, and I'm here to say bravo.
You want to wait for
Bravo.
your beer?
Yeah, no, I want it right now. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Less time with the hops.
Yeah, less time, and then if things work out, using less hops to get those same aromas. You know,
Right.
brewers, if they're loading in all these hops to account for those aromas they're losing, we could be over hopping.
So if both of these ideas become the norm for brewers across the country and indeed the world, we will have saved resources and we will have saved time, but the beer will be just as delicious as it's always been.
That is always the hope.
Right?
That's the plan.
You have to understand how crazy that sounds. Like how, maybe you don't because you're in the middle of it and you're the brilliant minds that are behind this, but like, if this becomes a thing all over the world, like, that's crazy that you're at the ground floor of it at Iowa State.
It's hard to like think that what we're doing like might actually change the way that somebody else does something.
Right.
But like if it did, I think my mind would be blown.
Okay, all right. And it's still early.
Yes.
Like how long do you think, is this 10 years away, 5 years away, 6 weeks from now? When does this start happening?
Well, I mean, so we're hoping to have our initial paper published, and we've already filed for a patent for our work. and have the initial paper published by the end of the year.
Right.
Once we have finalized all of the data, we're really hoping to potentially partner with some of the local breweries around us in Iowa to start piloting this on their systems.
Wow.
So if that goes well.
So that, I mean, you want to talk about proof of concept. Like if it's done on that sort of macro scale, then you're good to go.
We can do it on a 2-barrel system here,
Right.
but doing it on an actual commercial process would really change the game for proof of concept stuff.
What kind of blowback do you get from friends and family when you say, you know, I'm a graduate student and I'm learning how to make better beer? Because I can already tell, like, probably holidays are a nightmare. You got one uncle that wants to crack jokes or something. Like, has your family been supportive about going into this?
I think so. Dr. Brown every once in a while makes a joke like, "Oh, your family must be so proud."
Right. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about. Like, I mean, grad school's not cheap, right? So, like, in the investment and of your time and your energy and your work, you're both working really hard. I mean, it's obvious. It looks like they're having a lot of fun, but this has got to be really hard, right?
Sometimes it's harder than other times.
It's funny because to your point of like our family, so I came into grad school with the intentions of working in biorenewable fuels,
Okay.
which I still do.
Right.
That's what I came to do, and this was something that I fell into and learned to love. So now all of my friends and family think that I only brew beer.
Right.
And I'm like, I promise that's not all I'm
Right.
doing. But
She was going to go fix the world of its dependency on fossil fuels, but now she's making hops more efficient. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that, but you understand how some people could think, well, maybe that's a frivolous use of your brilliant brain.
I'd argue I'm often received better when you bring beer with you when you talk about it.
Well, there it is. There it is.
I actually finish the beer chapter is the last chapter of my dissertation because it's always nice to end on a high note.
Right on.
And for my preliminary exam, we brought water that we had flavored and carbonated with our rapid carbonation device, and that was very well received at my preliminary exam.
Does your carbonation process could you use it on colas? Could you use it on...
Well, it actually is sometimes used on colas, so we're primarily looking at using it on fermented beverages.
fermented beverages,
Yeah.
okay.
But it could be used.
It's like a seltzer? Could you use
Yeah,
it on?
yeah.
The gift of hosting a show is I get to meet the most incredible people with the most incredible stories. These are two of my all-time favorite stories. I mean, what you're doing here could very potentially change everything. So, great job, both of you. Thanks so much for all the work that you're doing here. I can't wait to see how this ends up. Like, I want to know how this story ends, but I think it's a happy ending for all of us. Continued success here at Iowa State and beyond. Alex and Sarah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cheers, thank you so much. We're here in Doc Brown's laboratory. Did you like hit your head on a toilet? Is this like a flux capacitor kind of situation?
No, I think he hit his head on a toilet.
Okay, so now that makes sense.
Yes.
Whoa, 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 you're telling me you're gonna carbonate beer 100 times faster?